Now, we're privileged to have Dr. Richard Pelker here with us tonight to introduce Senator John Barrasso. Dr. Pelker is a Yale man. He did his MD and PhD here. He's a professor of orthopedics over at the Yale Medical School, and he was Senator Barrasso's attending when he was an orthopedic resident here at Yale. So we're honored to have him, and without further ado, Dr. Richard Pelker.
Ron, thank you for the opportunity to introduce Senator Barrasso and to welcome him back to Yale after such a long stay. Dr. Barrasso, Senator Barrasso, I'm not sure what honorific to use, grew up in Reading, Pennsylvania. He went to undergraduate school at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, and did his, got his bachelor's degree from Georgetown University. He went on to medical school there and got his MD degree in '74. After leaving Georgetown, he came up to join us at Yale, where he spent 5 years doing orthopedic residency, where we spent many late nights together patching up the gunshot wounds and fixing fractures of various patients. I think that training may have stood him in good stead, given what happened in Washington the last couple of weeks. After finishing here, John left Yale and went up to Casper, Wyoming, where he had a successful orthopedic practice. He used to taunt me, saying that he had the view from his window out of his office, the beautiful snow-covered mountains in Casper, where I had to look at the slush-covered New England winters. John had a very varied career. He became chief of staff at the Wisconsin Medical Center. He's president of the Wyoming Medical Society. He also had was a TV and radio personality. He was also a rodeo physician. Also would probably have him in good stead in Washington. He was a local, national, and state personality. He had various positions as a Wyoming Physician of the Year, and the board of the directors of the presidential classroom in Washington, D.C. His political career began when he was a medical student. He was a resident. He was a representative to the local medical societies. When he went to Wyoming, he became a state senator in 2002. He was appointed when an opening arose in the U.S. Senate, in 2007. He was reelected to that position and was reelected to a full term recently with over 75% of the vote. John, welcome back to New Haven.
Well, thank you, Rich. Thanks for the introduction. We worked together for many years, and it was always enjoyable and interesting. And also one of our professors, Chris Keggy, is here tonight, who is a professor at Yale as well. Chris and I worked together at Waterbury for a number of years, and Chris is one of the real innovative people who came up with this whole anterior approach to hip surgery, which you published back in the 70s, about 35 years ago. And I hear that the New York Times just recently wrote about this new innovative approach to the hip, the anterior approach. So Chris Keggy, 35 years ahead of the New York Times at Yale. Lauren, thank you for what you have done for this organization. Thank you so very much, and congratulations to Harry and to Rich. And this guy that won the $1,000, he hasn't stopped smiling since he picked up the check. And I was so excited when I found out I was going to be following Bill McGurn. I called him last week, and I said, "What are you going to talk about?" He said, "I don't know. I have to write a speech for Rupert Murdoch first." So here, and we decided we would divide the time evenly. And he's an outstanding writer. I loved his column in the Journal forever. And I'll tell you, his final column in the Wall Street Journal was called The Education of a Newspaper Man. And if you haven't read it, I would recommend you Google it. It was, January of this past year. Because he writes about the ability of ordinary men and women to better themselves if given the freedom to do so. And to be here with you, and then to be here with with James Buckley, who is here as well. He also has written about the same issues, about giving freedom to ordinary people so they can do remarkable things. Now, in that final column of Bill's, he talked about the lessons he learned as a young writer from his editors, that we should think of individuals as minds instead of mouths. And to me, that's a wonderful image, and it's an undeniably conservative one. And it fits so well into what James Buckley wrote about when he described, and we talked about a little earlier this evening, the increase in government regulations that just get in the way of people who are trying to improve their lives, are trying to get ahead. And as he put it, the people who today occupy the bottom of the economic totem pole are deprived, you said, deprived by well-intentioned laws and regulations of too many of the traditional opportunities to make it on their own. So I'm very grateful to both of you for so clearly distilling both how conservatives differ from liberals, but also the human terms of what are at stake here as we talk about the future of conservatism in America. And when I look out at this crowd, the young people are here, how wonderful that is. Anybody that's concerned about where we're heading, you have a chance to visit with a number of these young folks, as I did before, you know we're heading in the right direction. But those of you who watched Washington in the past week know that our progress in advancing all of these causes isn't always as smooth as we would like it to be. As Rich said, I was the rodeo doctor, and one of the rules in rodeo is to score any points, you have to stay on the bull the full 8 seconds. So I just want to take a minute to talk about what's going on in Washington, where we are, how we got there, and I will tell you that conservatives all agree that we have the same goals when it comes to spending, borrowing, the debt, when it comes to the issues of the health care law. What we don't always agree on are the specifics of the best strategy to accomplish the goal and how much time it's going to take to accomplish. What can we get done all at once? So during times like these, I turn back to Bill Buckley, as I do so many times, having read Let Us Speak of Many Things in the speeches that he has given over the decades, which are a wonderful compendium. And you go back to the things, there's a message in there for all situations. He said, I've always believed that conservatism is the politics of reality, and that reality, he said, ultimately asserts itself. In a reasonably free society, he said, in behalf of the conservative position. So there has been much discussion, as Bill talked about, since the election last November. Where we are, where we're going, what we should do, what's the future of conservatism. So in addition to this Bill's quote on confidence about the conservative position in the long run, I also want to quote something he said a half a century ago, because he cared about the freedom of individuals that James has written about and that Bill has talked about, the freedom of individual people. He said, I care not merely that men should be left free to make their own decisions. He said, but also that we should have every opportunity to make them wisely and to cultivate the desire to make them wisely. Cultivate the desire to make them wisely, and that is my theme tonight. Because as Rich said, when I left Yale 30 years ago, in 1983, moved to Wyoming, started practicing medicine, I began on radio as well as television, doing medical reports, health reports, aimed at giving people information that they could use, as Bill Buckley said, to make decisions wisely. The whole idea was to give them information they could use to stay healthy and keep down the cost of their medical care. And for 30 years, and I continue to do these reports currently, I close every health report by saying, here in Wyoming, I'm Dr. John Barrasso, helping you care for yourself. That's my role as a physician, helping people care for themselves. Now, I think it's also a conservative message about the role of government. It's not about telling people what to do. It's about helping them make the right decisions to care for themselves. And you know, Ronald Reagan said it so well. Bill, you talked about the Declaration of Independence. I'm thinking about the Constitution when he said, when Reagan said in his farewell address, he said, all of the world's constitutions are documents in which governments tell the people what their privileges are. Our Constitution is a document where we, the people, tell the government what it is allowed to do. And we, the people, are free. Conservatives know that the proper role of government isn't to take care of us, isn't to hold our hand, it's not to pander to us, it's to help us care for ourselves. It's to give us that opportunity. The Constitution was written to limit Washington, not to limit America. And it's true in healthcare, and it's true in just about every other aspect of our lives. The future of conservatism doesn't require us to change that essential truth. What it requires of us is to help other people realize it, which is why I'm so happy with what you're doing with this organization at Yale. So I do want to talk about healthcare for a minute. We talked at length about healthcare at the table. I could put this whole thoughts and speech away and just talk about healthcare all night. I don't want to do that, but I do want to talk about healthcare for a minute because there is no area of public policy right now that better captures the differences between liberalism and conservatism. To me, the one word that defines liberals is government. And the one word that defines conservatives is freedom. Freedom to make our own choices, to take responsibility for our own lives, to take responsibility for our own health. These freedoms are incredibly important parts of the healthcare debate. When people make healthy choices, they're like exercising and eating right, they often have lower costs, fewer medical problems. When people make unhealthy choices, whether it's smoking, abuse of substances, overeating, failing to take care of themselves, they often have higher health care costs. Now, some of those costs the individual bears themselves, but most of those costs are borne by society. So any solution, I believe, to our skyrocketing health care costs must acknowledge this undeniable fact. If we provide the right incentives, incentives to encourage people to live healthier lives, then there's going to be adequate resources to help others get the care that they need. But the healthcare law has something called the community ratings. You know what that means? It means that two people of the same age in the same community for the same policy pay absolutely the same thing if one goes to the gym 7 days a week and the other never leaves the basement where they're sitting around drinking drinking Mountain Dew and eating Cheetos. The community ratings prevent anybody from creating the incentives for the American people to actually reward good behavior and punish bad behavior in terms of how they pay for health insurance. So liberals talk about responsibility very different than that. They say that responsibility means people have to buy government Washington-approved insurance. That's the responsibility, they say. People have a responsibility to pay higher premiums and pay higher taxes, to pay their own share, and then to pay for somebody else's share. And that's what the president has called shared responsibility. Now, as conservatives, we think of responsibility very differently than that. Liberals are, they're amazing. They say, if you just give us a little more freedom of your freedoms and you just give us a little more of your money, we can make your life a lot better. I know the people in this room have not been deceived by that promise. The focus on redistributing wealth was one of the targets of Bill Buckley, what he took aim at in God and Man at Yale. He criticized the textbooks that were used here to educate, the textbooks as well as the professors who used them, who railed against what they called the unfair distribution of income in the United States. Well, since that book came out in 1951, every conservative leader has studied and stood on the shoulders of William F. Buckley, Jr. And this past April, we lost one of the greatest of those conservative leaders, Margaret Thatcher. You know, in 1977, and I was talking to some of the students about this earlier, in 1977, you watched this video recently, as leader of the opposition party, she wasn't prime minister yet. As leader of the opposition party, Margaret Thatcher appeared with Bill on firing line. Is it on YouTube, or where did you get it? Okay. So the Iron Lady talked about Britain's movement down the wrong path. She said they were heading toward more government control, more restrictions, and higher taxes. As a result, she said, in her country, she said, we are more and more concentrating on redistributing the wealth that we have rather than creating any more wealth. To create more, she said, we need a slightly freer society and you need an incentive society. Well, Margaret Thatcher was exactly right. Now, today, liberals in America continue to rail against income inequality and they call for wealth redistribution. Let's take a look at the Occupy Wall Street movement. Bill, they never came up with they never came up with a coherent message. They never came up with a coherent philosophy beyond taking money from one group of people and giving it to another. Their definition of need became wanting somebody else's money. And their definition of greed became someone wanting to keep the money that they had earned themselves. Now, the future of conservatism rests in the continued willingness of men and women in this room to dissent from that view. And it's our duty to help others see not only that America is heading in the wrong direction, but also that the path that we offer is a better one. We have to resist as liberals try to move our country further down the wrong path. As Bill Buckley said, we must certainly say stop. Now, conservatism is also about saying, in my opinion, and come with us. Stop and come with us. And I know everyone here has noticed that liberals aren't calling themselves liberals anymore. They're starting to call themselves progressives. Well, using that label doesn't mean that they're any more interested in progress than conservatives are. It's just that we fundamentally disagree almost entirely on the destination to which we should be progressing. We want to help human civilization advance as conservatives. It's about striving for better. It's about climbing the ladder. It's about helping others climb the ladder. Let's face it, the free enterprise system has done more to raise people out of poverty in this country than all the government anti-poverty programs combined. Conservatism, in its past and in its future, it builds a ladder for just about everyone to climb. We don't promise equal outcomes. What we do promise is that equal opportunity and consistent rules that people can live by. It's that conservative vision of America that over the centuries has brought many, many people to our shores. It's why my grandfather got on a steamship 112 years ago out of Naples. His name was Giovanni Barrasso. He came to the United States, and he was a cement finisher. That's what he did. He came here like millions of others yearning to breathe free. He was willing to work and sacrifice and strive for a better future for him and for his family, for his kids, his grandkids, and for his community. Now, his son, my father, he had to quit school in 9th grade because of the Depression. He was in World War II. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. He was also a cement finisher. And summers during high school and college, and even my first 2 years in medical school, I worked alongside of him pushing wheelbarrows of heavy wet cement. It was backbreaking work. He never complained. He was very plain-spoken. From the time I was a little boy, he would always say, "John, you should thank God every day because you live in America. You don't know how fortunate you are." Bill Buckley knew the importance of that outlook. He just said it differently. He said, too many Americans, quote, are well acquainted with the dictum that we should count our blessings. He said, but we don't actually perform the exercise. The exercise, thanking God for the blessings that we have as citizens of this great country, it is rooted in the American dream itself. The American dream is about people using their ingenuity, their ambition, and their hard work to overcome obstacles. Look, all of us Americans admire people who try and fail and try again, the inventor working in the garage, somebody who's striving until they finally succeed. Americans speak with great pride about having worked their way through college, washing dishes, flipping hamburgers, pouring concrete, whatever it is. You don't hear people bragging or speaking with pride about being bailed out by Washington or cashing a government check. The idea of people earning their success has been a vital part of our nation's character since our founding. It's one of the core values that conservatives are trying to conserve. Doesn't come from government, can't be redistributed. Healthcare reform that pushes millions of people onto a broken Medicaid system is not the same as helping them care for themselves. Giving people unemployment benefits and food stamps and funding short-term stimulus jobs is not the same as freeing up employers to hire workers and provide a career path for others. You know, handing out benefits from Washington can provide a safety net in the short run, but when that short run becomes permanent, it robs people, robs them of the tools and the incentives they need to succeed. Now, you mentioned Art Laffer. Ronald Reagan's favorite economist, Art Laffer, has pointed out the trap that Washington benefits create. He wrote this earlier this year in the Journal about a single mother 2 children in Pennsylvania who could earn up to $9,000 a year and still get government benefits from the state as well as from Washington, totaling $45,000 a year. Now, as soon as she earns any more than $9,000, she starts losing some of the benefits on a dollar-per-dollar basis. So her marginal tax rate for working essentially is 100%. She needs to make a taxable income of more than $69,000 before it becomes economically worthwhile for her to work. For her, not working becomes the rational alternative to working. And this is because our government has created a system that favors learned helplessness over earned success. Now, as conservatives, we believe that what you tax, you get less of, and what you subsidize, you get more of. And if you tax work at 100%, many people won't do it. If you subsidize inactivity, you're going to get more of it. And there are certainly times when government needs to step in to help those who truly can't help themselves, but for all others, help from Washington needs to be limited and it needs to be temporary. Now, I have to stress that as a conservative, I have faith that a great many Americans want to reject these government handouts because they know it can entrap them in a life that they don't really want for themselves, and they certainly don't want it for their kids. And it is up to us to speak to and for those people looking for a path through these government-imposed barriers that James writes about, the government-imposed barriers to greater freedom for their family. Now, I love the story that Mitch Daniels told at this meeting last year. He talked about a single mother in Wyoming who was interviewed by the New York Times back in 1980 when Ronald Reagan was running for president. And as Mitch told it, this woman from Wyoming mystified the reporter by saying that she supported Reagan's proposed income taxes. But why, the reporter from the Times asked? You don't make enough money to pay income taxes. The woman replied, one day I will. As conservatives, it is our goal to give all people in our society the lives of opportunity so that everybody can reach their full potential. Now, the future of conservatism requires us to apply these steady principles to new solutions to the challenges of today and tomorrow. And we need better ways to explain ourselves. These challenges include our sluggish economic recovery, the loss of blue-collar jobs, stagnant wages, the failures of our educational system, and even health care. People want lasting solutions for the next generation. They want jobs, they want careers, they want opportunities. These are the concerns that matter to the American people. We need to prove our case that conservative solutions will put us on the right path. Now, we all know that redirecting America from this present course is going to require time and immense effort, because we do know that the team in the White House right now can still do a lot of damage before the next election. This president and the Democrats in Washington like their government supersized. So before I finish, I want to talk for just a few minutes about elections, because elections have consequences. The Buckley rule calls for us to support the rightward most viable candidate. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about how that rule should apply to one candidate or another. None of that should overshadow the plain fact that to govern, we must win elections. Losers don't legislate. Margaret Thatcher once said, first win the argument, then you win the vote. And conservatives, I believe, are in a strong position to win the argument, and with committed hard work, I am confident we will win it. But elections are not reward systems. They are job applications. And conservatives need to show that we are there fighting for middle-class America, fighting for the underdogs. We must speak for the aspirations, the anxieties, and the anger of every American. And I believe the candidate who can do that will win the argument and will win the election. And I believe the candidate who can do that will also be the rightward most viable candidate. He or she is out there today. Some are in this room. I met a young man here who's a student who's running for council here today. You'll likely accept campaign contributions from anyone in this room? It's okay. But that man or woman out there today realizes intuitively, as that young man does, that our government, with its high taxes and its rules and regulations that are burdensome, expensive, and time-consuming, that government that's putting out those sorts of things is their adversary, not their advocate, and they will join the fight just as he is joining the fight. Right now, the president has a megaphone, and we have cupped hands. But still, the American people are hearing us. They understand that government can help create opportunities, but today, government is crushing opportunities. Now, anyone who tried repeatedly to sign up for the last 18 days for Obamacare on the website that keeps crashing is ready to listen to conservative ideas about what government can and cannot do. So tonight I will tell you that I am totally optimistic about the future of the conservative movement. And I want to close by just thanking each and every one of you for the part that you're playing in the battle to win the argument. I'm going to fight every day in Washington, fight to win the argument, and I know when we do, that America will shine very brightly again. For the William F. Buckley Jr. program at Yale, I'm Dr. John Barrasso, helping you care for yourself.
Thank you, everyone, very much for joining us tonight. We're actually about to bring out our second round of speakers. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, thank you all very much. Very much to our speakers here this evening and everyone who traveled here to be with us. Thank you.